Welcome to Business Reporter's Future of Healthcare campaign. Today I'm talking about employee health and well-being and the role of absence management within that, with Nick Reeder from Medigold Health, employee well-being specialists. Good morning, Nick.
Morning.
Nick, a recent study from the Office of National Statistics, and I quote, says that in 2016 there have been 137 million working days lost because of illness or injury. That means 4.3 per employee. Is that a good stat?
It's actually much higher than that. It's more around 7 days per employee per year. And the reason that it's inaccurate is organisations like the ONS and CIPD, they're very reliant on organisations giving them that data. You know, they ask for it and then they get a mixed response. Some of those organisations will send that back, some won't. So the statistics are very inaccurate. And really that's based on the fact that the organisations collecting that information, their processes and procedures are flawed. They're actually more often than not under-reporting on the amount of absence that they have. So it gives a very skewed picture of what's actually happening.
So it seems like, part of the problem is actually getting the stats right in the first place to understand the scale of the problem. Let's just say a company wants to start to change this issue. How do they go about it?
That's a very good question. And it's really about understanding what's going on within the organisation itself, because it can be quite complex. If you want to use the analogy of a car, the organisation is a car. Then the engine is the employees, and the kind of mechanics, if you like, are HR and management. Now, an organisation will set its goals for the year and pretty much knows where it wants to be and what it needs to achieve in those 12 months. The issue that I've always found is that actually the engine, the employees, are only ever really running at about 70% productivity and efficiency. HR and managers are tasked with helping that engine to perform at 100% efficiency, but they're not really given the right tools and the right equipment in order to be able to facilitate that happening.
Right, so then if we look at within the company, so you've described this idea of a car and the sort of mechanics around there, who's kind of leading the pit stop team?
Most of the attention always turns to HR. It's their brief to kind of look after the human resource, the employees. But actually, it's a much wider issue than that. Everybody within the organisation needs to be looking after health and well-being and needs to be involved in that process. And really, the way to do that is by giving managers and employees, really, the right tools and the right equipment to be able to follow a process. All organisations have good policies and procedures in place, but really there's no framework around those to make sure that things happen as and when they should. And really everybody's trying to follow that process with one hand tied behind their back effectively.
So let's take a specific example. Say I phone in, I'm feeling a bit unwell, slightly nervous about coming to work, not specifically, but just not wanting to go into work.
Yeah.
What happens then?
Well, what you'd do is you'd call in and report your absence. The key thing there is to make sure that yourself and everybody else within your organisation follows the same processes and procedures. Because historically, it can be quite different depending on what part of the organisation you're in, where you are geographically, or even who your manager is. It's really key that that process is streamlined so that you call in, you'll speak to a medical professional if the case is needed, and what that individual will do is signpost you into the relevant health and wellbeing processes. As an organisation, Medigold Health would understand what facilities are available to you. We do a lot of work post-implementing any kind of service for you to understand your hierarchies and how it works within the organisation, so that you're speaking to the right people, you're getting the right advice, and you're going back to work that much quicker. At the same time as doing that, managers are informed of what's happening throughout that process. So at the start, middle and end of an absence, the manager knows exactly what's happening and when that individual's likely to be coming back to work. And the way in which you do that is you spoon feed them with notifications and with management information so that they know what's happening, what they need to do, what's expected of them, but actually giving them the ability to do those things as well. And at the same time, giving senior management and HR visibility of what managers are doing, when they're doing things properly, and where areas of improvement are.
You're describing a process that sounds quite holistic. When traditionally, I think this has been something that's always fallen into the kind of HR department. Managers wanted just to pass it along to HR.
Yeah.
So how do you go about kind of changing that?
It is something that you have to change culturally, and in order to do that, you have to really make management and individual employees understand their part in the bigger picture, and actually what effect absence is having on that organisation. By giving them that clarity and visibility, they clearly can understand what they need to do in order to help reduce absence and improve employee health and well-being, and the overall productivity and efficiency of the organisation. It's kind of a win-win throughout that whole process. But if they don't have that clarity and they don't understand that in the first place, then it's very difficult to change that culture within the organisation.
So once you've been sort of taken on by an organisation, how would you go about giving them that confidence? What are the first steps that you take so that they buy into the process fully?
The key there is communication. You can have buy-in from the top level, and it's very important to have that, so you get that top level sort of trickling down through the management structure down to the employees. But also you very much need the buy-in from employees and managers, and that really is just about education and bringing them up to speed on why it's so important to have those processes and procedures in place. And really that it's everybody's responsibility, from the individual employee through to the manager, through to senior management, HR. Everybody has to be brought into that process. You can only do that by showing them clearly what the benefits of doing that is.
So you mentioned earlier that a big part of that is kind of the data and the information that you can feed to the company. So what are the other kind of tools, perhaps enabled by technology, that you can give to an organisation to help support this change of culture?
It's about clarity. In this day and age, there's so much data and information that you can collect on what employees are doing and what the issues are within their organisations, that it's really important to give that visibility to managers and HR. And historically, that's kind of done in a very reactive way. It takes time to collect that information and to then distill that out to the relevant people. If you can do that in a much more real-time way and actually show that kind of information to the people who need to see it as and when it's happening, then you can become much more proactive about it. And then you can actually move it to the next stage, which is becoming predictive. So using all of that data to analyse what's been happening and forward predict what's going to happen. And that is a much more proactive way of managing the health and well-being of your individual employees within your organisation.
What is the measure of success?
Individuals are much healthier and happier and at work. Then in terms of organisations, they're saving millions of pounds and actually regaining thousands of working days in productivity. And as a country, then there's much less strain on organisations like the NHS, and everybody's doing their bit to help the government to reduce absence and improve employee health and well-being.
Nick, thank you very much.